I want to come back to the book and the purpose of the book. So
this is the last question. We're at time. You gotta go. Sorry.
Yep. Well, that's almost a first, not an absolute first, but to have a member of staff of the former Vice President of the United States actually speak up during the interview to say that we were going too long. I didn't expect that. But coming back to the interview itself, it seems to me at its very heart, there is a reluctance on the part of Kamala Harris to actually spell out and talk about the issues that Joe Biden had as president. Was it Joe Biden's decision, his failure to recognize his own frailties in that position that put you in the position that made it almost impossible to win that race?
He was not frail as president of the United States.
Madam Vice President, there's nothing you said I couldn't ask you.
Because I have a lot to say. And so, fuck it. I was in a state of shock.
Really? Mm. Did you think the day before that you were going to win the election?
I did.
Yeah. And so when did the proverbial penny drop?
When I got a call from my campaign manager that it looks like we need 200,000 more votes that we can't find. Meaning it's just the map, the numbers. And the thing I kept saying over and over again, I was in a state of shock. I was so inarticulate, but maybe very articulate. What I kept saying over and over again is, my God, my God, my God.
Really?
Over and over. I couldn't stop. I haven't felt that emotion, anything similar to the emotion I felt that day and for quite some time, other than the grief I felt when my mother died.
All right, family. So let's talk about this Kamala Harris interview, or more accurately, let's talk about the absolute mess that this aftermath of the Biden administration and how Kamala is out here on this awkward, cringy, please don't blame me book tour, trying to pull the Clean Up Woman Act while dodging every real question thrown her way. And first of all, the wildest thing about this whole situation is how she knows she's getting pressed and she's still playing this weird political tap dance like the rest of us can't see through it. And like, ma'am, you can't gaslight the world when there's literal footage, headlines in real-time decline happening in front of our eyes. This ain't 1994. The receipts are instant now, and Twitter exists, TikTok exists, and we all saw that Biden debate where bro couldn't even string two coherent sentences together. And we saw the blank stares, the confusion, the loss of train of thought mid-sentence. And it wasn't just a bad night. It was a warning light on the dashboard. And Kamala over here acting like it's just jet lag. Like, girl, stop. Like, come on. So now let's really walk through this thing, right? And before I walk through it even more, let's check out the interview more in depth. And I'll continue to give my commentary, and I want to know you guys' thoughts down in the comments below.
Joe Biden, then, to put it on him, wasn't his refusal to recognize his own frailties the reason that you faced a nearly impossible task?
I ran against Donald Trump for president, and Donald Trump ran on a platform that was, in large part, I believe, misrepresenting his intentions to the American people. I do believe that there are a fair number of people that voted for Donald Trump who believed him when he told them that his first priority on day one is going to be to bring down prices. And he didn't. And you combine that misrepresentation of intention with also what was at play in terms of massive amounts of mis and disinformation.
Now, forgive me.
And a truncated calendar in terms of the clock.
I want to interrupt you because that is a world-class pivot, but it is not the question that I asked you, which is about Joe Biden's failure to recognize his own frailties and what that did to you. The question is about Joe Biden. Are you still reluctant to criticize the former president?
In what regard, please?
Well, just in terms of that question. So you went on...
What exactly would you like to ask? Be more specific, if you don't mind.
Was it Joe Biden's decision, his failure to recognize his own frailties in that position that put you in the position that made it almost impossible to win that race?
He was not frail as president of the United States.
But he had frailties. We all saw the debate.
I do believe that Joe Biden had the capacity to be president of the United States, and I have never doubted that he had the capacity to be president of the United States. If you want to talk about whether he had the ability to endure what a race for president of the United States would require in that political environment in 2024, as I've said in the book, I had concerns.
I'm just wondering, is there a reason why you won't go to that prolonged frailty question? Now, we saw the debate, we saw the difficulty he had marshalling his thoughts.
I have answered that question. I do not believe that
I think it's just hard watching the debate to see how there could not be a problem long term with someone who can't marshal their thoughts. I'm not saying his acuity wasn't present.
I talked about that in the book. And I also mentioned the context in which that debate occurred. And you'll probably remember how I talked about that in terms of what his travel schedule had been, that what he had been enduring in terms of the timing of that debate. I talk about it extensively in the book. I'm not shying away from that. That's why I wrote it in the book, because I do know it's a question people had.
Well, family, the interviewer, shout out to foreign press, because American media would never straight up ask Kamala, was it Biden's refusal to acknowledge his own frailty that made it damn near impossible for y'all to win? Boom. Simple question, fair question. And what does Kamala do? The most Olympic level pivot we're seeing in years, I should say. Homegirl dodged that question so hard, she landed into another country and started talking about Trump. Like what? Who mentioned Trump and you were asked about Joe Biden, not your favorite deflection. And it's like asking someone if their car broke down because they ignored the oil light and they start talking about how their neighbor's car doesn't even have oil changes. Miss me with that, because the reporter, though, she wasn't having it and she called it a world-class pivot to her face. And that's foreign media for, girl, what are you even saying right now, basically? And here's the thing. Kamala is trying so hard not to throw Biden under the bus. But in doing so, she's basically sitting on the bus, watching it crash and telling us, nah, it's fine. I trust the driver. Sis, we all saw the crash, okay? We all seen the crash. And we all watched it in real time. Her main talking point was, I believed Joe Biden had the capacity to be the president, but I was concerned about his ability to run for president. Like what? Let's really break that down. That's like saying, I believe this man could be a surgeon, but I don't think he can make it through the hallway to the operating room. It's a contradiction in plain English. And the reporter catches it too. Like, how can you claim he's sharp enough to govern the entire free world, but not sharp enough to campaign? If he's too tired, too frail, too mentally spent, I should say, to run a campaign, how in the world is he doing 3 a.m. crisis calls about foreign policy and national security? Don't insult our intelligence like we are dumb Americans. And look, I looked at it in a way of elder abuse, because and I am so against elder abuse and I respect the elderly to the utmost core. If Biden was not in the capacity for the campaign and he seemed frail, who had his best interest? You know what I'm saying? But it also reminds me of how our veterans and the elderly aren't taken care of in America. The elderly who worked jobs, who invested, who paid taxes. You know what I'm saying, family? So it hits me to its core, because we all have a grandma, we all have a great grandma who actually was positive and a positive asset to the community, did communities of service back then, worked hard, was part of the working class people. I know my grandmoms were and still is, the ones that are alive. So it hits deep for me, right? Because you would think when someone family member is too frail to continue to go on and mentally spent, that you will have their best interest to take care of them and look out for them. If they're not mentally being able to discern that they can't understand, like, look, they are mentally in a place where they think they can keep going, but they really can't. Like, I had a great grandma. God bless her heart. Rest in peace to her. Just to As some context, she had Alzheimer's and she could bake some amazing cakes from scratch, boy, and make ice cream from snow. Lord, I miss it. Recipes wasn't passed down, unfortunately. But she thought she can still cook and bake cakes like she used to. But us, as my family, having her best interests, we would still allow her, in a sense, to have her ability to be able to cook, having her experience. But we will, however, it's like a child at that point. You know what I'm saying, family? We have the we're basically doing um hand over hand interaction with her, where we are actually standing over the pot and administering the heat and turning on the stove, and she's beside us, but she's still having an experience by letting us be with her, but also letting her still feel as though she still has the ability to cook, but in a more safety, having her best interest measure. Well, she didn't stand over it. She didn't stand over the fire. She didn't stand over the pot, right? She didn't even control the knobs to turn on to light the fire to cook. We had family members that were with her, and she would be beside us, and we would have great conversations and say, "Oh, grandma, you could cook that cake. You could bake that cake like that. You could make that homemade soup. This is what you used to do." And however, it may not have been exactly how she wanted to be, but it still was her best interest taking part. But she still was doing what she loved while we were protecting her, having her best interest. And I don't feel like a lot of individuals, a part of the Biden administration, let alone Biden family members, had his best interest. Let me know what you guys think about that, because that's my take on it. But let's check this out.
Talking about competence at
Right.
all. No, I believe he was fully competent to serve.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
That surprises me, actually.
No, I do. There's a distinction to be made between running for president and being president.
What's the distinction?
Well, being a candidate for president of the United States is about being in a marathon at a sprinter's pace, having tomatoes thrown at you every step you take.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's more than a notion.
Get involved in public service, ladies and gentlemen.
And to be the seated president, the sitting president, while doing that, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. I think it's a hard case to make for people that he didn't have the stamina to run, but he had the stamina to govern. Because I think most people view the presidency as a marathon run at a sprint with tomatoes being thrown at you in terms of governance. So I think that drawing that distinction. And again, I recognize the incredibly difficult place you are in with that.
All right, family. I want to also speak on, because it gets deeper. Because the emotional manipulation kicks in when she compared her election loss to the grief of losing her mother from the last clip. And now, and I'm not saying she didn't feel what she felt. Grief is real, loss is hurt, and she's entitled to her emotions. But we got to call it what it is: a sympathy appeal designed to shift the focus of accountability and onto vulnerability. But see, that only works when folks believe you were being straight up the whole time. And right now, folks feel like she's been lying by omission, enabling Biden's decline, and now trying to rewrite history with this book tour that she's on, selling this book with all these interviews that we're playing with in regards to these clips that I'm sharing with you today and having a conversation with you guys. And speaking of the book, yo, why is everyone in the administration? Because we got Karan Jean Pierre, who was basically the spokesperson who was part of the Biden administration, who held the White House briefings, right? Why is everyone trying to drop a book like it's a mixtape after a bad breakup? Like, we don't need memoirs, we need answers. And she's on this book tour, Kamala Harris, talking about how she didn't run for governor because she didn't want to be transactional, but she's literally trying to sell a product while ducking real questions, and that's textbook transactional. And it's the equivalent of saying, I'm not trying to date right now, while sliding into the DMs or inbox, or, sending heart emojis to someone, right, that she's trying to flirt with. Make it make sense. And then we get to the part where she low-key admits that Biden called her before the debate. right? Let's get to that part because I find it interesting.
Hotel room with Doug, with my husband, and the president calls, and I was told that he wanted to call me so that I'd be ready, and I was so sure it was to buck me up and go get him. And he did say that for the first beat, and then he went on to talk about a group of people in Pennsylvania who were saying bad things about me because they heard I was saying bad things about him. And when I hung up the phone, it was unbelievable. And I was angry and deeply disappointed. It was so unnecessary. There are only two people in the world other than me that has debated this guy, Hillary Clinton and him. And you know what it's like. It's going into a debate with the stakes being that high, and Trump hadn't agreed to another debate. The stakes were so high. So that's an example of what I mean.
You took something from that. You took an underlying message about one's intentions from that, because I would. If someone called me in the lead up to debate prep and said something like that to me, I would assume that they don't want the best for me.
My takeaway is his motivation was all about himself.
That's what I would assume from that.
Yeah.
I would assume that.
Yeah, right. Obviously, right. Yeah. It wasn't about my performance at the debate. Well, you know, if I had done it over, again, part of the reflection, you know, we had the infrastructure deal. We had the CHIPS Act. So we're building back up America's infrastructure. It's 150 years old. CHIPS is about manufacturing chips, U.S. manufacturing, both incredibly important. If I had to do it over again, I would have first gone with our family policy. That was about extension of the child tax credit, affordable childcare, paid family leave. We needed to deal with the immediate issues affecting the American people. In fact, that's why I ran for the 107 days on those issues, including having Medicare cover, for example, for people in the sandwich generation who are taking care of young children and older parents, Medicare cover home health care, right? Mm-hmm. Why I offered for small businesses that they would get a $50,000 tax credit because nobody can, for startup small businesses, because nobody can start up a small business on a $5,000 tax credit.
Are you going to run again? Because I looked at the polls. I looked at the polls, and you're leading for the Democratic side, and there isn't really a clear Democratic candidate. I interviewed Gavin Newsom as well, but when I look at the polls, you're still leading.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I don't know, honestly.
I feel like you know in your heart.
What do I know in my heart?
I feel like you know if you're going to run in your heart, or if you have a calling or a feeling to run. Is something germinating?
I'm focused on the book tour sincerely.
Yeah.
And part of how I'm feeling right now, part of the reason I didn't run for governor of California, I really don't want to be transactional right now.
Well, she mentioned her call, Joe Biden calling her before the debate, not to pump her up, not to prep, not to strategize, but to check her on what people were saying about him, as you heard. And that's the type of ego that shows you were his head was at. Not only on the win, not on the mission, but on who's gossiping. And she said it felt like it wasn't about her performance at all. It was about his reputation. Boom. That's the frailty right there. That's what folks been trying to say. It's not just about the age or the memory slips. It's the inability to put country over ego. The refusal to step back when you clearly ain't got it no more. That's the real issue. Now let's talk strategy, because Kamala says she have led with family policy instead of infrastructure, and if she could do it over, cool. But why are we getting this hindsight now after the loss? Why weren't you saying this during the campaign? Again, if you got all these smart, real, tangible ideas after the game, but you stayed quiet during the game, then that's a reflection on your political instincts. And if you're trying to run again in 2028, because let's be real, that's the whole point of this tour. in my opinion. People are going to remember this moment, and that when the when the house was burning, you brought a memoir instead of a fire hose. And then there's Gavin Newsom. Check this out.
And we'll continue to build on the legacy, I would argue, of our former president, who I think was one of the most successful presidents in the last century, and that is Joe Biden. And I will defend that to my grave in terms of the CHIPS and Science Act, the infrastructure bill, the work he did on the IRA, the fact that he had a worker-centered industrial policy, and the fact that those are the right policies for this country.
They're all getting undone, right? I mean, everything.
A lot of them, but not, well, many aspects are being celebrated by the Trump administration.
All right. So you have Gavin Newsom. Another one talking like Joe Biden was the GOAT, greatest of all time of presidents. One of the most successful in the last century. Bro, what, bro, what are you talking about? This is the same Biden administration where groceries shot up, rent skyrocketed, and the southern border became a revolving door. And what's the legacy here? More book deals and higher prices? Look, you could defend Biden's policy wins. Every administration has some. But the way they're trying to paint this man like he's Obama times FDR times Lincoln is just delusional. I don't know what type of narcotics. I hope they're not. I don't know what they're smoking. I'm going to just say it like that. I'm not even going to say narcotic. I don't know what they're smoking. I don't know why he thought Joe Biden was better than Franklin D. Roosevelt. Obama times Franklin D. Roosevelt times Lincoln. Again, I'm going to say it again. Just delusional. Nuts. Popcorn head nuts. And again, it's that same play. Gaslight the public, ignore the decline, and hope nobody asks follow-ups. But people are asking. And this time it's not just conservatives, it's the global press. It's swing voters, it's independents. Even some Democrats are squinting like, yo, are we really doing this again? So bottom line, Kamala's out here trying to run for president in 2028 without ever admitting what we all know happened in 2024. And that's why she's getting pressed. That's why the media ain't letting up. Because if you're not honest about the loss, then you're not ready for the win. You can't lead the future while lying about the past. And this whole strategy of deflect, dodge, and downplay, it's tired, it's obvious, and it's not going to work anymore. But hey, we'll see. Because if Kamala and Gavin really want to run on Joe Biden was the greatest, and I didn't know he was declining, quote unquote, they're free to do that. But they better be ready to get cooked in the kitchen they help build. Because the American people are watching. And this time, we're not just listening. We are remembering. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. Spread that peace, love, and positivity, and I'll catch you in the next one. I love you guys, family. I appreciate you guys' support. Truly, it's truly a blessing. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy breaking down things from a common sense perspective and just giving you guys the idea just to continue to challenge you guys critical thinking as you guys challenge me to think and look at different things and have different insights and perspectives. As always, we just here to have a conversation. Me and you, we in this together, family. Peace.